Welcome to Reddit Revenge Stories. Did you know over 90% of our viewers don't subscribe? If you enjoy this video, please subscribe and hit that like button. We're targeting 500 likes on this one. Let's dive into today's tale. I never thought I'd be the kind of man to tell a story like this. You know, the kind of man who wakes up one day and realizes his whole life has been a lie. I used to think betrayal happened to other people, like in movies or books, not in the quiet corners of real life. But life has a funny way of humbling you when you least expect it. My name is Daniel Cooper. I'm 38 years old, born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. I've worked in IT for almost 15 years, the kind of job that doesn't turn many heads but pays the bills and keeps the lights on. I met my wife Amanda at a friend's birthday party when I was 27. She was a second-grade teacher, soft-spoken and full of laughter. She had this warmth to her that drew people in. When she smiled, it was like the whole room softened around her. We dated for a year and a half before getting married in a small ceremony in her parents' backyard. I still remember her walking down the aisle barefoot in the grass, her hair swept back with daisies. It felt like a dream, like the kind of love you read about in those dog-eared romance novels she kept on her nightstand. Our life was simple. We bought a two-story home in a quiet suburb, fixed it up little by little, hosted family dinners, and went on the occasional weekend trip. Amanda had her classroom, and I had my office job. We didn't have kids, not by choice exactly, just bad timing, miscarriages, and eventually acceptance. We had each other, and that felt like enough. For a while, things were good. Not perfect, not movie-worthy, but comfortable. Amanda made chicken pot pie every Thursday night, the one with the flaky crust she perfected after months of trying. She loved gardening and spent her Sundays pruning roses and fussing over her tomato plants. I mowed the lawn, cleaned the gutters, fixed whatever needed fixing. We had routines, inside jokes, quiet moments of companionship. I thought we were solid, but it's funny how the cracks start to show, not all at once, but in tiny moments that don't seem important at the time. It started with Amanda being on her phone more than usual. She used to hate screens, always saying they ruined real conversation. Suddenly, she was texting constantly, smiling at her screen when she thought I wasn't looking. I told myself it was probably one of her friends or a group chat about school stuff. I didn't press. I trusted her. Then there were the nights she stayed late at work. Parent-teacher conferences, she said, staff meetings, curriculum planning. I didn't think much of it. Teachers work hard, right? I'd come home to an empty house, warm up leftovers, and wait for her to walk through the door smelling like chalk dust and hand sanitizer. But more often than not, she came home tired and distracted, sometimes not until 10 or 11. She'd kiss my cheek, apologize for being late, and then head straight to the shower. We stopped talking about our days. I started noticing other things. She changed her passwords, stopped letting her phone sit face up on the table, started locking her laptop. She'd laugh at texts but never say who they were from. And when I asked, she'd get defensive. "Can't a woman have a little privacy?" She snapped once, her voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. I let it go. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous, paranoid husband. But it wasn't just the phone. She changed in other ways, too. She started dressing differently, putting more effort into her appearance, even on weekends. She started going to the gym, a new one, across town. I offered to go with her once, and she looked horrified, like I'd suggested something outrageous. "It's my me time," she said. I nodded, even though it stung. Still, I convinced myself I was imagining things. Maybe she was going through something. Maybe it was early menopause or stress from work. I made excuses for her. I tried to be patient, kind, supportive. I bought her flowers on random Tuesdays. I left notes in her lunchbox. I planned a weekend getaway to Asheville, thinking some fresh mountain air might bring us back to each other. She canceled the trip 2 days before we were supposed to leave. "Something came up at school," she said. "I'll make it up to you, I promise." She never did. The final straw came on a rainy Friday in March. I had to leave work early after a server crashed, and I came home around noon. I wasn't trying to catch her doing anything. I just forgot my laptop charger and figured I'd grab lunch while I was at it. Her car wasn't in the driveway, which wasn't unusual. But the front door was unlocked, and when I stepped inside, I heard something upstairs. A thud, like someone moving quickly. I called her name. No answer. I walked up the stairs and saw the bedroom door ajar. I pushed it open and found the window wide open, rain blowing in. The bed was rumpled and there was a man's watch on the nightstand. Not mine. The bathroom smelled like cologne and the shower was running. I stood there for what felt like hours, my heart thudding in my chest. I didn't see who it was. Whoever he was quick. Slipped out the window, I guess. Amanda came home 2 hours later, soaking wet and flustered. She claimed she'd been at the grocery store. I asked her about the watch. She said it was her brother's that he'd stopped by earlier. I didn't believe her, but I didn't confront her either. Not then. Instead, I did something I never thought I'd do. I started watching, listening, digging. I set up a spare phone to record audio in the living room while I was at work. I went through the phone records. I checked her GPS history. I even followed her once, watching her pull into the parking lot of a boutique hotel on the other side of town. She didn't see me. She walked in smiling, wearing the blue sweater she always wore on our date nights. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, every moment of our life playing like a cruel joke in my mind. Every I love you, every hand held in quiet comfort, every anniversary dinner. It all felt poisoned. But I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I didn't cry even though I wanted to. No, I made a plan. I was going to let her dig her own grave. I kept playing the part of the loving husband. I made her coffee in the morning. I kissed her goodbye. I asked about her day. All while I gathered every piece of evidence I could find. I saved texts, screenshots, receipts. I found out who he was, Ryan Mitchell, a guidance counselor at her school, married, 2 kids. I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to make her feel the depth of what she'd done. I was going to burn the fantasy she built with him to the ground. But not yet. No, revenge is a dish best served cold, and I intended to serve it frozen. So I waited, smiling, pretending, and the whole time I was writing the end of the story she thought she was controlling. There's a strange kind of power in knowing something someone else doesn't know. Every morning after that day, I looked Amanda in the eyes and smiled, like nothing had changed. She thought she had me fooled. She thought she was winning. But I had already seen behind the curtain. I knew the truth. I just hadn't decided how to use it yet. People think revenge is about anger. But for me, it wasn't that. Not really. It was more like clarity. Like someone had wiped the fog from the mirror and finally let me see things as they were. I wasn't driven by rage. I was driven by purpose. Every moment I spent pretending to be the same man she thought she was fooling just added fuel to the fire I was building. I started with information. I made copies of everything, her text logs, email exchanges, photos she didn't know I had. I found a way into her cloud storage, which, ironically, had the same password as the one she used for Netflix. Rookie mistake. There were folders she probably forgot about, with screenshots, saved photos of them together, even one of him kissing her neck in the school parking lot. She had saved them like souvenirs. I uploaded it all onto a flash drive and locked it in my desk drawer at work. Then I printed hard copies and put them in a manila envelope I labeled "For When I Stop Pretending." It was a weird kind of insurance policy. I didn't need to use it yet, but just knowing I had it made it easier to smile across the dinner table. I also got to know Ryan Mitchell. I watched him from a distance. I figured out his routine, when he left for work, where he grabbed coffee, what time he went jogging. I even struck up a conversation with his wife Claire at a school fundraiser. Amanda didn't know I knew who she was. Claire was friendly, bright-eyed, and completely unaware that her husband was cheating with mine. That night, I went home and sat at the kitchen table with a notepad and pen, drawing lines and arrows like it was some kind of military operation. I didn't want drama. I didn't want a messy public confrontation. I wanted consequences. Permanent, undeniable consequences. And most of all, I wanted them to see it coming too late to stop it. I started making subtle changes. Nothing obvious at first. I stopped doing her laundry. I took her off the joint credit card. I removed her as a beneficiary on my life insurance policy. She didn't notice. She was too busy sneaking around and making up lies about late meetings and surprise faculty dinners. Then I started being unavailable. She'd call during lunch, and I'd let it ring. She'd text me where I was, and I'd wait hours to respond. She began to notice something was off. One night she asked me if I was okay. I just smiled and said I was tired from work. She believed it. Or maybe she wanted to believe it. Guilt makes people see what they need to see. The real shift started when I decided to play their game. One morning I called in sick and followed Amanda to school. I parked across the street and waited. At lunch, she didn't go to the cafeteria. She got into her car and drove to a quiet parking lot behind a small church. A few minutes later, Ryan's car pulled in next to hers. They sat there, talking, holding hands, laughing like teenagers sneaking around after curfew. I took pictures, not in a creepy zoom lens way, just enough to prove what I needed to prove. I didn't want revenge based on hearsay. I wanted facts. And now I had more than enough. I started leaving hints, little things only she would notice. A second toothbrush missing from the bathroom. Her favorite mug replaced with a new one she hated. A bottle of unfamiliar shampoo in the shower. A woman's scarf accidentally left on the back of the couch. Each time I watched her face for the flicker of uncertainty. She never asked, but she knew. One night she came home late, again, and I was already sitting on the couch sipping a glass of wine. I had lit candles, something I hadn't done in years. She looked surprised. "What's the occasion?" she asked, setting her purse down. I smiled. "Just wanted to do something nice." She looked at me the way you look at a stranger who remembers your name. We had dinner, made small talk, and for a brief moment, I saw something in her eyes. Maybe guilt, maybe nostalgia. Either way, it didn't matter. I had moved past hoping she'd come clean. A week later, I arranged to meet Claire Mitchell. I had found her work email, she was a graphic designer, and sent her a message under a fake name requesting a consultation for a project. We met at a coffee shop. I showed up early and grabbed a table in the corner. When she arrived, smiling and professional, I handed her the manila envelope. She looked confused. "What's this?" "I think you should see it," I said. She opened it slowly. Her smile faded with every page. I watched her eyes scan the text messages, the photos, the screenshots of hotel receipts with Amanda's name and credit card. She sat back in her chair, quiet. "I'm sorry," I said. "I didn't know how else to tell you." She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stared down at the table like the floor had disappeared from under her. "I need to go," she said softly. I nodded. "Take your time." She stood up, envelope clutched in her hand, and walked out. I never saw her again. But I heard what happened next. Ryan came home to find his suitcase on the porch, and the locks changed. Claire filed for divorce within the week. Word spread quickly at the school, though no one said anything directly. I made sure of that. I wasn't interested in turning it into a public scandal. I just wanted the consequences to hit home. Amanda noticed the tension. She became anxious, paranoid. She'd check her phone constantly, pace around the house, and flinch when the doorbell rang. One night she asked me, "Have you noticed anything weird lately?" I shrugged. "Like what?" "I don't know. Ryan's acting distant. People at school are weird. It's like someone knows something." I looked her straight in the eyes. "Maybe they do." She stared at me, but I didn't blink. She opened her mouth to say something, then closed it again. She knew. She just didn't know how much I knew, or what I was planning next. I waited another week. I wanted her to sit in it, to feel the unraveling from the inside out. Then, on a quiet Saturday morning, I left a letter on the kitchen table. In it, I told her everything that I knew, that I had known for months, that I had spoken to Claire, that Ryan's life was crumbling just like hers was about to. She came downstairs half an hour later, clutching the letter and shaking hands. "You knew," she whispered. I nodded. "I knew everything." She sat down, silent, trying to speak, but no words came. "I could have shouted. I could have thrown you out. But I wanted you to feel it, every lie, every betrayal, every stolen moment." Tears welled in her eyes. Dan, No, I interrupted. You don't get to explain. You get to leave. And I had already prepared for that. I had packed her bags, called her sister, who agreed to let her stay for a few days. I handed her the suitcase and stood by the door. This house is mine. The lawyer will be in touch. You made your choices. Now you live with them. She didn't fight. She didn't scream. She just looked at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. That was the point. She walked out of the house with her suitcase rolling behind her. I didn't watch her drive away. I just closed the door and exhaled for the first time in months. But that wasn't the end. No, I wasn't done yet. The revenge wasn't complete, not until she truly understood what she lost and what I gained in her absence. In the weeks after Amanda left, the house was quiet in a way I hadn't known I needed. No more whispered phone calls in the other room, no more fake smiles over dinner, no more pretending, just silence. Honest, peaceful silence. For the first few days, I wandered around the house like a stranger in a hotel room. Her toothbrush was gone. Her side of the closet was empty. The scent of her perfume still lingered faintly in the bedroom, like an echo of everything I'd tried to hold on to. But I wasn't grieving. Not really. It was more like a long exhale after holding my breath underwater for too long. I went through everything with a clear head, canceled her name from the utilities, removed her from the insurance, even returned the anniversary gift I had ordered months earlier when I still believed in us. It was a watch, engraved on the back with the words, "To the time that's still ours." Now it felt like a joke. I returned it without a second thought. Amanda reached out once, about a week after she left. She sent a simple message. "Can we talk?" I didn't reply. There was nothing left to talk about. But revenge. Revenge still had one more phase to unfold. I knew Amanda had tried to get back into her routine, but nothing was quite the same. She had moved into her sister's guest room, and from what I heard, the environment was tense. Her sister never liked me much, but she hated liars more. Amanda's image of herself as someone admired and trusted was unraveling fast. Claire had quietly shared the truth with a few close friends at the school. Nothing public, no shouting matches or finger pointing, just the quiet power of truth, passed from one person to another like a flame lighting candles in a dark room. Suddenly, Amanda and Ryan weren't the golden faculty members anymore. They were the cautionary tale. Ryan tried to act like none of it affected him, but I knew better. His marriage had collapsed, and the fallout had left him scrambling to pick up the pieces. He had moved into a small apartment across town, the kind of place you go to when you can't afford pride anymore. And the school had taken notice. Whispers of inappropriate conduct, unprofessional behavior, and damage to community reputation had started to circle. He wasn't fired, not yet, but he was definitely under review. And Amanda? She was unraveling, day by day. I could have let it end there. I had won, hadn't I? But I wasn't done. Not yet. There was one more thing I wanted her to feel, the loss of something she never thought she'd lose. Respect, not from strangers, from someone she loved. Enter her father. Now, Amanda's dad was a proud man, military veteran, church deacon. Family meant everything to him, and honor mattered more than appearances. I knew he idolized his daughter, believed she could do no wrong, and she had never given him a reason to think otherwise. Until now, I didn't go to him out of spite. I went to him because I believed he deserved the truth. Not the tabloid version, not the gossip passed around by PTA moms, the real truth. We met at a small diner he liked, the kind of place with worn booths and coffee that tastes like history. I didn't bring photos, I didn't bring documents, I just told him the story. My story, our story. He didn't say much, just listened, his jaw tight, his hands folded on the table. When I finished, he nodded once and said, "Thank you for telling me. I'll handle it from here." I never asked what he said to Amanda, but I knew it was bad. She tried calling me again after that, twice. I blocked her number. Then came the letter. Handwritten, pages long, pouring out apologies and explanations and regrets. I read it once, folded it neatly, and burned it in the fire pit in the backyard. That was the last piece of her I allowed into my life. After that, I began to rebuild, not just my routine, but my identity. I signed up for a gym, something I hadn't done in years. I started cooking for myself, taking real pride in it. I even joined a weekend hiking group through a local community center. I met new people, made new friends, real ones, people who knew me for me, not just as Amanda's husband. One day, months later, I ran into Claire again. It was unexpected. A bookstore, of all places. We were both reaching for the same novel. We laughed awkwardly, exchanged a few polite words, and then we just kept talking. For nearly an hour, standing between shelves of paperbacks and biographies. She looked better, stronger. There was a calm in her voice that hadn't been there before. She'd moved on too, not in a rebound way, but in the way someone does after finally letting go of a weight they carried too long. We got coffee afterward, talked about everything, and nothing. It felt good, not romantic, just honest. Over time, we became friends, real ones. I never expected that. But sometimes the wreckage of a disaster leaves open land behind, and on that land, new things can grow. Amanda still works at the school, last I heard, but she's a shell of who she used to be. She lost more than just a marriage. She lost the image she built of herself, the respect of her colleagues, the trust of her family, and most of all, she lost me. People say forgiveness is strength. Maybe that's true, but for me, letting go wasn't about forgiving her. It was about reclaiming myself, the part of me she tried